Hello and welcome back to the 12 Blocks of Christmas Quilt Along. We're on day 10 of this Quilt Along and today's block is going to be a Flying Geese block. You can follow along with this Quilt Along using the completely free quilt pattern in the description of this video. The free pattern will give you a 45-inch square Christmas tree layout quilt. If you want to make a bigger quilt or choose a different layout, you can upgrade to the full pattern. The full pattern is 50% off during the duration of the Quilt Along, so you can get it now for just $7. Let's grab our fabric and make our Flying Geese block. Here are all of my pieces cut according to the free pattern, and the first thing we're going to do is assemble our half square triangles. I'm using this Christmas light fabric as the background and the candy cane as my fabric one. And the first thing we want to do is draw a diagonal line on each of these background fabrics on the wrong side of the fabric, so the back side of the fabric. And even though this is a Flying Geese block, we are breaking the Flying Geese down into half square triangles just to make assembly a little bit easier. And I'll walk you through that as we assemble the final block and have all of our half square triangles assembled. So after we've drawn the lines on our half square triangles, we're going to pair them up with our fabric one. So I'm using this kind of peachy fabric and the candy cane fabric as my fabric one to make it a little bit more scrappy. And after we've paired them together, we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away on each side of the marked line. After that, it's time to cut our half square triangles apart. So I'm going to be using my rotary cutter and my ruler and cutting diagonal to diagonal along that marked line that we marked earlier on each of these, and that's going to give us a total of 8 half square triangles for this block. 4 will be in the candy cane fabric and 4 will be in that pink peachy fabric I chose. And you can do it in all the same fabric, a bunch of different fabrics, whatever you think is going to look best, and we will press towards the darker fabric. So after we've assembled and pressed, it's time to trim, and we're going to trim all of these half square triangles down into 2.5 inch squares. Accuracy is going to be really important for these half square triangles just because there are so many. So the most important thing is making sure that diagonal line on your ruler is lined up with the diagonal of the half square triangle. That's going to make sure everything is nice and square and trimmed perfectly to 2.5 inches. So we're going to trim all 8 of our half square triangles down, and then we'll have our one background fabric square left over. That one is going to go in the center of the block, and then we're just going to make our Flying Geese all around the edges. So I am starting with my kind of pink peachy fabric here, and then I'm going to rotate in with the candy cane fabric, and so on all the way around. And you'll just want to make sure that your half square triangles are placed into that classic Flying Geese shape, with the bottom of the goose, or the long part of the contrasting fabric, should be facing towards the center of the block, and all of the points should be facing away from the center or on the edges. So this is what the final layout looks like. I'm pretty happy with how this looks, and now it's time to start assembling our block. So we are going to assemble by piecing the top row, and then the middle row, and then the bottom row. And then we'll want to press in opposite directions. So in the center, I pressed away from the center, and the top and bottom rows, I pressed towards the middle. This is going to help our seams nest and make sure all of our points stay in our block. And this is what our final block looks like after it's pieced together. The last step is to trim to 6.5 inches. And when I'm trimming, I'm just making sure there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. So my block ended up being very close to 6.5 inches. So I'm just cleaning it up a little bit here, just cutting off the little slivers. But I am pretty happy with how this block looks. I think that the red looks great with the peach, and it really plays nicely with that Christmas light fabric. And I am really loving how this quilt is coming together. I will show you where we're at in tomorrow's video as far as the final layout goes. But we are very, very close to finishing this Quilt Along, and pretty soon we'll have our complete 45-inch square Christmas tree quilt. So I will see you all tomorrow for block number 11.